I am so excited that I get to just be with you. I mean, I love Glenn, obviously,
Yes.
but having some girl time, some girl talk is always really good. And today we're going to be answering a question from one of our listeners in regards to a podcast and words that you and I had said regarding like our sexual relationship and breaking out of the box and trying new things. And she had fear. I'm actually projecting that emotion. It may not have been fear, but what I understood it is, am I not enough as I am? Do I actually need to do more to be quote unquote enough? Welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. This is the podcast where we break open the emotions that take us from being disconnected to connected in our relationships and in ourselves. I am your host, Tera Wages, and joining me is typically marriage and family therapist, clinical sexologist, Dr. Glenn Hill, but I have his incredible wife, Phyllis, and together they have founded the Connection Codes, which is the guide to human connection. And we're so glad you're here.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Hi, friends. It is amazing. I love that we decided to do this, just to talk with each other and to do a podcast like this. We are always trying new things, and this is definitely one of those. I don't know if you want to read just the parts of it so that our listeners can understand. We want to say we love your emails. And if you want us to talk about a certain topic or you have a question you would love a podcast to be about, please email us, because that's what it's all about to us, is that we're connecting with you as our listeners. And so this email came in and we thought, okay, because it came from a previous podcast, we really should talk about this. So can you read a little bit of it?
Yes. So she says, yesterday I was listening to the Pressure from Sex Part 2 podcast. And everyone, there are so many new ideas that excite me and help me make sense of past experiences. A few things in this episode have me wondering. Phyllis talked about having the goal to learn how to pole dance or lap sit, suggesting it didn't need to be now, but in the next 5 years. Tera and Wes mentioned that they had not gotten comfortable with phone sex yet. Both of these things suggest to me that there's a higher level of correctness in how we connect intimately with our partners, that there is more we need to aim for. I absolutely agree that exploration and pushing the envelope is a great way to show up in intimacy. It's a posture of trust and vulnerability. However, the idea that where I am isn't good enough, or that I need to do things like mimic a stripper is what my goal should be, doesn't make sense to me. Any perspective on this? What am I missing? Great question.
Yeah, I think you're definitely enough. We don't want ever to communicate that we have a judgment on you, or that there's a standard, there's a correctness or a perfection in anything. It's more the idea of the adventure. It's more, I want to grow in adventure. And what just popped into my mind is that this week, I needed a U-Haul truck to get some stuff in storage. And I thought I had a driver lined up, and then that fell through, and I was panicking. I had fear, high levels of fear, because I'm like, I've never driven a big truck. I can't even imagine driving a big truck. But I somehow knew I have no option here. I have to go get that truck, and I have to drive that truck. And it was a really funny moment, because the person at the U-Haul place that brought the truck to me, drove it to me, was a woman, and she got out. In that moment, I'm like, I can do this. Who cares that I'm a 61-year-old, almost 62-year-old woman who's never driven a big old truck before? I can do this.
Yes.
And I got in it, and I'm like, okay, just breathe. Like, put your seatbelt on, and you can do this. It was a crazy experience, because it was almost like I had to call all my kids individually. I had to tell them, I felt like an Amazon woman driving a truck. And I laughed and I joked. I said, who knows? Maybe that's my next career. I'm going to drive trucks. Or I mean, it was such a powerful moment for me to go, I'm never too old to learn something new or try something new or attempt something that I have a lot of fear around.
Yeah.
And I think that brings so much energy and life to us as individuals. And I think that in our sexuality, it's just the idea of being open to adventure, being open to learn something new. You know, you might get stuck in the what's the point? What's the purpose? You know, and there is no judgment. Like there really isn't. If you and your partner are just like, oh my word, we have it perfected in what we do and how we do it, that's great. Like for us, it's more what's behind that. Is there something that stops you from new adventure?
Yeah.
And you know, I would say there's a lot of things in life where because of fear, we get stuck. I know people that won't leave, they won't fly because of fear. I know other people who, you know, they have fear in even the travel sense of staying in a hotel. I can't personally relate to that because we travel so much. Even going to other countries, like for me, it's all such an adventure. But then I do have friends who are quite never leave their city, right? They just don't leave. And that's harder for me to relate to. And I think, okay, how do we bring this into our life, even in our intimate relationship? And just, I want to be adventuresome. I want to have that freedom. And it's interesting because specifically she was connecting pole dancing to a stripper. And I thought, wow, like I always think that so much has been robbed from us by either the porn industry or, you know, prostitutes or whatever. It's like so much has been taken away from us. And I'm like, I don't want to give them that power. I want to know there's freedom. I have friends who are just exercise fanatics and they're in incredible shape and, you know, super proud of them. But like they actually in their gym have a pole to exercise from. I can't even imagine because right now at this point in my life, I'm like the strength it would take to use that as an exercise tool. And I mean, even a parallel bar in gymnastics, there's so many things that I'm like so impressed by that I'm like, I don't know that I could imagine ever trying even to accomplish something like that. But we have certain connections, right? And to me, I started there. I mean, many of you know my story that, you know, early in our married life, like for me, it had to always be in the dark and under the covers. I had so much shame around my body, around sex. You know, I was taught very clearly the purity message, which it's wrong, it's dirty, you know, it's sinful. And no one came along and switched my switch to say, oh no, it's beautiful in marriage and your body is beautiful in marriage. So I had the hardest time going from the purity message of this is wrong to no, this is now right. There's a huge gap there.
Yeah.
And so I think that just in the fact that when we're suggesting you have adventure or you try the pole dancing, and for you guys, for you and your partner, there may be no interest in that whatsoever. And that's fine. There's not a judgment on that.
Right.
But it's like the adventure of could we ever? I went to a birthday party not too long ago. I think my friend was turning 40. She rented, like you can go to studios and learn how to, it was a type of dance that has to do with a chair, you know? So I'm picturing, I don't know if you call that chair dancing but it was very sensual and the music was very sensual. And we were in this beautiful studio and the woman that was teaching the class was amazing. And I mean, there was probably 10 of us and we all had our own chair. And of course there's mirrors everywhere. And it was super fun.
Yeah.
And I've done this multiple times because the idea is, could I now get good enough at that I could bring it home to Glenn and do that kind of dance for him
And feel confident.
Right? We're in a room with a bunch of women. I mean, we laughed a lot, which was interesting because the woman leading the class did not want that. She really wanted us, like it was even dim lighting. She did not want us to be watching each other. She really wanted us to get into the music and even feel the experience in our bodies. Like there was no judgment at all.
Yeah.
There wasn't a right way and a wrong way. I thought it was a beautiful idea. And I thought I would have to come to a class like this many times to get confident in that. And I enjoy dancing. Like I'm all about, as you know, a great dance party, but that was another level for me to get good. I was like, I kept thinking I'm going to fall with this whole chair situation. I kept thinking I'm going to fall and hurt myself. So I was so worried about the dumb chair that I had a hard time just relaxing and actually making it look sensual. But I think how sad that we miss because we have connected something to a certain group of people.
Yeah.
And, we've actually heard this before. This is not an unusual thought or question. Kind of, I think pornography has stolen so much from us. And because of that, even wearing something sexy, we connect it to whatever. Oh, that's what a prostitute would wear. Instead of realizing, well, no, I feel sexy. And, for Glenn, I want to look sexy.
Yeah.
I want to do that. Yeah. That has nothing to do with this prostitute that maybe on Broadway, the corner, like on the side of the road.
I feel like what we are trying to do is to help break open the box for people. And everyone's box looks so different. And our mission and our heart is for you to just find what feels good for you. And our struggle is that the main message that we receive is, lights off, be very clean. You're very ladylike, very proper, all of these things. So it's interesting to hear that's like, oh, wait, no, now there's judgment on the other extreme of it. Like if you do those other things, well, now am I not good enough? And it's like, no, I love that you already emphasized, like, no, it's what is great for you and what is great for your partner. And I really think that second part of it is the big clue of, are you and your partner on the same page of what you want to do? And so, I mentioned that I'm not good at phone sex yet. That's something that Wes is really interested in. And with him planning to become an airline pilot, something that I may need to get good at. He's going to be gone, for half the time. And so that's something that because Wes desires to explore that, I am willing and open to explore it for myself. Now, there are definitely things I have my own boundaries on. That doesn't mean that just because he wants to explore, it's an automatic yes for me. It's still super important. I need to emphasize this, that you respect your own boundaries and your own needs. But I think so often as women, because of our own conditioning, if Wes previously would bring something to me, my instinct was, no, I'm not doing that.
Right.
No, I'm not doing that. And I actually was with someone not long ago. We were talking through things that her husband had vocalized, his desires for her. And I was like, ooh, I want you to revisit that. And actually look through that list and ask yourself, what is happening for you with each of those items? Because you may actually end up discovering that it was fear that was holding you back, or it was shame that was holding you back. And if you actually process those things, you may be open to it. It may actually be something you're interested in exploring. And there may be things that you're like, yep, nope. That is still a no for me because the fear is too great. It's not worth my personal boundary for. But it will clue you in and it will connect you to him because now your instinct isn't just no. Wes was so used to hearing the word no from me in so many areas of our sexual journey. For the first 12 years, it really was going through late night and me hearing you share things that you were open to, things that you had explored, in your own stories of encouragement where I was like, whoa, oh, we can do that? Phyllis is a lady. Phyllis has her stuff. Like, okay, if Phyllis can do this, I can do this. And so we want to share these stories of what we are learning because there is someone listening that they just need that permission.
Yeah.
They just need that idea, that spark, that little push for, oh, okay. Well, yeah, I'll try that with my partner. And it may be something you hate. It may be something you really, really love.
I've shared this before. Like 40 years ago, this was a taboo subject when we were getting married. It's still a taboo subject 40 years later. Yeah. And I feel so much anger in that because even I think just talking to you right now, I'm like, and listening to you, I think you just mentioned a friend, like her husband had a list or something. And I think, I know that if you and I were sharing ideas about anything, whether it's a recipe, whether it's the movie you just saw, whether it's a place y'all visited in Minnesota, like I tune in very differently. And I almost feel some shame saying this, but when it's Glenn that's sharing all the things, I run it through a different filter, almost like is he saying that my cooking's not well? Is that why he's giving me a recipe, or good? My cooking's not good. Like I run it through this judgment filter, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm talking with a bunch of girlfriends and we're shooting, we're saying, oh my gosh, I just went to the beach and it was so wonderful. And this one, I hear it differently. I'm talking now, I used location, I used movies, and I used a recipe. But let's just talk about sex in the sense of if we got together and we said, oh my word, there's this, I know you like rent clothes for business and fun, like trips. Well, I never heard that before, right? You taught me something about, you could switch out your wardrobe more easily and cheaply by renting clothes. Well, I didn't know that was a thing. And I think about, there's times when someone will say, hey, if you want some really fun, like wardrobe stuff for like sexy lingerie, here's a website and it's so much cheaper than Victoria's Secret.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, thank you for that tip.
Yeah.
Like that to me is gold. And so just like being invited to a birthday party where we learn to dance with a chair, using a chair, it's like, oh, wow, that was so fun. And I did have a little fear, right? But I was able to process. I think even the day that we were scheduled to go, I panicked, which is fear. What do I wear to a studio that teaches dance? Like I don't have that kind of like, so I'm texting all the other girls going, what are you wearing? Like, or I don't know what to show up in, and it's like, just be comfortable. It doesn't matter. And it genuinely was like, they all showed up in something very different. I thought you had to have this specific workout clothes. Well, it wasn't true. But I think that we react in ways with each other
Totally.
very differently, right?
Yeah.
And I think, okay, so if we would stop this whole, it's a taboo subject and could just talk about it and be like, oh, you mean that's not only in the category of strippers? You mean if I learned, to do that, it would be fun? It could be like, and there are things that we kind of throw around. I think a lot of us know or are familiar with someone saying, oh, I've played strip poker. But I think even that we can have a judgment on that. Like immediately we think it's in a group setting instead of realizing, no, it can just be you and your spouse. Like you can play strip poker and that can be fun. For some people, we were talking to a couple just this week and he thought that would be great fun. And they were playing and she began to lose. And all of a sudden she was like, I hate this. I'm not doing this. And I'm not stripping for you, which brought out a lot of stuff that's really deep inside of her. Right. And I think, okay, guys, we may have some work to do. Like we may have to go back to what is deep in there? Like, where's that early messaging?
Yeah.
What happens for you at the idea of that adventure, that new idea? And I even think about, you shared about phone sex and probably to kind of even break that down. Like what happens for you Tera, in the idea of phone sex. Because for me, Glenn can be in one room of the house and I can be in the other room of the house. And it is a super fun thing to do.
Yeah.
I think for some of you listeners, you may go, I don't even understand what you're talking about. Like, and I get that. Like, we're not always super specific. Part of that we do intentionally because we don't want it to look, we don't want to mandate. Like, we're not trying to say this is the only way phone sex can be, but it's a fun connector. And part of the reason why early on we got good at it wasn't because Glenn was traveling. It was because we knew if we can't teach it, if we don't know what it's like or what it's about.
Yeah.
But there are people who travel a lot and they're falling into disconnection during the time that they're gone from each other. And so we're like, okay, how can people stay connected when they're not together for long periods of time?
Yeah.
And we don't want people to, disconnect over those times. And we don't want one or both of you to go in different directions. It's like, well, that's when I really struggle with porn because I'm without my spouse for a really long period of time. It's like, ooh, let's bring that back in and get you guys connected. And, now we don't even have just phones. I mean, we have FaceTime and we have computers where we can Zoom with each other and it can be a whole lot of fun. And you're not even in the same room.
Yeah.
It's that process. So can you walk us through what happens for you?
Yeah, I will.
At that idea of, because there's something that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that this is a good example too for anyone that's listening to think about what is that thing that you're curious about, but there's something blocking you there. Like you even want to participate, but there's something happening for you to ask yourselves these same questions, for you to kind of go through the same deepness. And I also want to add this caveat that Phyllis and I are here to be like the girlfriends. Like you had said, if my girlfriend gives me a recipe, I'm like, ooh, okay, maybe I'm interested in that. That's our goal.
Yeah.
We want to be the people. We're here to share, like, this is what I tried. This is what I experienced. That way to spark ideas, and not that you do that exact thing, but that you find what works for you in that thing. Yeah. So for me, I struggle with sexy talk, period. I have gotten, I have to brag on myself because I do get people email me and tell me, like, somebody said that Wes deserves a medal for being married to me. That was very yeah, you're right. He does deserve a medal. I am a lot to handle, but also I'm a dang good partner and that man is getting some. So if I talk bad about myself now, I also feel like I have to defend myself on this podcast, which is painful. But I struggle with sexy talk. And that goes back to my childhood that and sorry, Mama, that I'm talking about this part. We didn't have a voice in our house. And so even I was just on a coaching call with our business coach. He was like, well, what questions do you have for me? I was like, I struggle with questions. Like, I struggle even knowing what question to ask. And so I get this mic on and I can like talk up a storm. But in day to day, I get really struggle with getting curious about things. I didn't have that curious bone in me. And so that comes with asking questions or talking sexy. There has to be like this level of curiosity about it. And so there has been this like consistent block. I have so much shame. Am I going to sound stupid? Am I going to embarrass myself? Is my voice a turn off? Those kinds of things.
Wow.
And so it's not something that I have conquered, because even now Wes will be like, just talk to me. And I'm like, I don't know what to say, like, ooh, you're hot, like I struggle. But I will share something I've done recently that I think is going to be helpful to me. And this summer, I only read business books. Like for the last decade, essentially, I've read business books or self-help books, something of that nature. And a friend gave me 2 fiction books. And so I started reading fiction this summer. And then I was like, you know what? This is going to be my spicy girl summer. I'm going to read spicy girl books. And I just finished reading a series that's very popular right now. It's like fantasy. And the last book is very spicy. And so I was reading it. And I was like, Wesley, let me read it to you. And so while I really struggle coming up with the words myself, I read to him part of the book, and that was very fun. It was very it's giving me the words. It's helping me to know even in the future, oh, okay, these are things that I could say. And oh, you like that part of the book? Wait till I literally at the end of the night, I was like, wait till I read you this other part of the book, And so
I love that.
It does. It's a way to still get creative with yourself. And so for me, finding what my block was, and then now thinking about tools that I can use to overcome that block while processing my shame, processing my fear, and feeling very, very safe with my partner.
Yeah.
That is actually the biggest piece of it. I am very, very safe with my partner. I feel completely protected by him in all areas. Yeah.
Well, and I think, I love that you got out of your normal, you got out of your comfort zone. And it started with a friend saying, yes, we all know you read business books, right? And it's to go, oh, try this. And you were open to go, and it had nothing to do with Wes. It was, okay, this friend said.
Meg Hill was the first one to give me my fiction book.
That's what I thought. Okay. And she's great at giving books. Especially if she's read it and really likes it, then she's really you should read this. So it's okay, it was through a different avenue, but it opened up let me just see how this works out, which is such an adventure. And I know Wes loved it because it's just an adventure. It's the different, it's the, we're doing something here. And I think, it's interesting because a lot of us have done theater at least once. Maybe it was high school, maybe it was junior high, but we've done theater where someone handed us a script. And in the script, we became a different person, or, we had lines that we had to memorize. And a lot of times we are 100% okay with that. But when someone suggests we do that with our partner and it's in a sexual sense, all of a sudden it becomes a moral issue. I think that's sinful. And to me, that's where you get to the core of, what's happening with that? What did that trigger for you? And it could be shame or guilt or fear that, yes, we are, somehow this is going to be sinful, even though, yes, I can be in theater or I was in high school and I can memorize lines, but I can't bring that into the intimate relationship with my husband.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes you got to break it all down.
Right.
It's even my kids were in theater through high school, and, our youngest, danced multiple times on the stage in different plays or Broadway musicals that she was in, and had to learn to do that. That was out of her comfort zone, but they needed her, and she rose to the occasion, and she did an incredible job. But I thought, okay, we're okay with that. But then to go, hey, dance for your husband. And it's whoa, who just said that? All of a sudden we take it off of a stage where we're dancing in front of hundreds, if not 1,000 people. And then it's whoa, no, I can't do that. And so that's where I think the self-awareness, the self-work, the talking about it, going, what happens for me? That immediately changes to a different category. That immediately goes from, it's totally fine, on stage, but no, it's not okay in the bedroom.
Yeah.
And I think too, like you were saying, well, I don't know how to talk. It's well, you'll just like learning a new language, you'll never learn until you practice.
Yeah.
And the cool thing that I've never seen, and I know and adore Wes, I'm not sure you could do anything wrong with him when it comes to that category.
Yeah.
Right? Sexually, just anything would be so fun for him.
Yeah.
There's not a judgment there. He's not on a panel at Juilliard going, no, you really sucked at that song or that dance or whatever. It's more just that it's the two of you. There's no judge and jury in this one at all. And, again, I know for some of you listeners, this may be really out there. So feel free to email if we need to clarify better. But I think that, wow, we've just given it over to the dark. We really have. And we've kept ourselves in this little tiny box because we're so afraid of being sinful for many of us. And it's like, wow, where's that judgment coming from? Who's that voice you're hearing? Is it your grandmother's? You know, is it your youth pastor? Like, whose voice are you hearing that is telling you that what you do in your intimate relationship with your partner is judged by them?
Right.
You know,
right. Or that it's not good enough.
Yeah. Or that it's not.
If you and your partner are both connected and you're experiencing pleasure, because that's another huge part of it, is so many women forego their own pleasure because they don't know what's possible or there hasn't been exploration. They just kind of like, well, this is what it is and I'm just going to keep it here. But if you and your husband are both experiencing pleasure, you're experiencing connectedness, then man, keep doing what you're doing, girl, you know? And if it brings you joy, then you do you. We are not there to judge any lack or any grandiose, wherever you fall on the spectrum is exactly great for you.
And I think that's an important point to make that you just said. I think that the experience I had this week, like if 2 weeks ago you had said, you know, Phyllis, you should learn to drive a truck, I would have said, no, I don't need to learn to drive a truck. And I don't want to learn to drive a truck. And I'm not going to learn to drive a truck. That's what I would have said 2 weeks ago. But I did it this week, kind of because I had to. And now I feel like I could conquer anything.
Yeah.
Like I cannot believe I drove a truck.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm like, okay, what is my list of things? I have a pretty long list at this moment in my life. Like, of things that, no, I wouldn't even try that. No, not going to go on that adventure because nope, I'm not going to, I'm not going to learn to scuba dive. I'm too old. There's so many things I would put on a list right now that are just like, nah, I could have done that maybe in my 20s, but not in my 60s. And I don't want to live that way.
Yeah.
Like I'm ready to scratch that list and throw it away. Not just throw it. I'm going to burn that list and I'm going to start over.
Yeah.
And this next chapter of my life, I'm going to go, I want to be open to adventure. Yeah. I have years of life still in me. I don't want to become an old fuddy-duddy. Like, I don't want to sit on a couch. I don't want to get in a rut. Yeah. I do want adventure in my life across the board. Yeah. And I think, okay, that also means I always want to be open to adventure and learning something new that's can rock Glenn's world. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, let me explore that. And if there's something within me that is stopping that, I want to figure out what is happening for me. Like, what is happening for me? And is it just a hard no? And there's no wiggle room? There's no way for me to go, okay, let me figure out why is that a hard no? You know?
Yeah.
And it's, again, we're not trying to put pressure on anyone. We're not trying to say that
you have to do certain things.
Right. You have to do certain things. I'm just thankful at this moment in my life to go, I don't want everything to be hard. No, I want to go, okay, I'll consider that.
Yeah.
And I'll consider it. How about that?
Well, I think that's also a great point. I know we need to get to the wheel, but thinking about the fact that another box I think that we put ourselves in is that, sexy sex is reserved for the 23-year-olds, the 25-year-olds, for the young girls that are, a size 2 and got good boobs and a good butt. Like we think, because that's what we've seen sexualized to us, that is what good sex is. And that is one of my favorite things about having you and Glenn teach late night is that you break down, like you take a wrecking ball through that and you're like, listen, let me tell you what good sex is at any stage of life. You've had 4 kids. I love when you talk about you discovering after your kids were born, your Sunday date nights. Okay, I've had 4 kids. Like good sex happens when you're in your 30s, postpartum, before kids. Good sex happens in your 50s. Great sex is happening in your 60s. That there is no box of where great sex falls. It is all about you and what's happening inside your own body and processing your fear and processing your shame and in finding that joy. And that is where you're going to break your box and experience really beautiful connecting sex. And so view me and Phyllis as your big sisters and little sisters showing you the way of like your girlfriends telling you like, hey, let's try this out. Have you thought about this? Without the judgment of, you can be like, oh yeah, girl, I've tried that. Or no, not yet. and go from there and see what happens. And so now we are going to do the core emotion wheel. And that is the 4-minute tool that Dr. Glenn and Phyllis created that actually helps you identify those emotions that are firing you. That way, when your partner or your girlfriend does give you an idea, you can be like, ooh, okay, that's hurt that's happening, or that's shame that's happening. You'll actually know what it is firing in your body. So once you uncover that, you can actually see, oh, okay, yeah, no, I can process that fear and move on instead of being weighed down by that fear, which is how I spent the majority of my sexual life, was being weighed down by the fear. And once I started processing that stuff out, y'all, that's where things got good. And so we're going to show you how to do that 4-minute tool. Do you want to go first?
I'll go first. And let's do an issue specific, which means we'll talk about all of the emotions around sex. Anger is the first one that pops into my mind. Just anger for myself, that when I was preparing for our honeymoon or our wedding, no one talked to me. I just knew nothing. And so for me, my wedding night was traumatic. And I feel so much anger with that. I feel, oh my goodness, just guilt over this life, been married 42 years, and the guilt of the early years of rejecting. You mentioned that earlier. I rejected Glenn so much, pushed him away. A lot of guilt around that, a lot of shame in how I took for so long to really get to the self-work that I've needed to do, like to process through what happened with me, with all of this, what happened for me, what does happen for me. There's a lot of self-work that needed to be done. I feel fear even right now that at times that I'm changing in age, changing in season in life. I feel sometimes fear that I am too distracted to tune in to Glenn in a fun, sexy way, and I don't want to be in a rut. So lonely, I would say this topic is super lonely for me because I don't think enough of us are talking about it. And there's always fear too of judgment, fear of people misunderstanding, people being hurt by what we're saying. So I have fear in that. Sad that this is still such a taboo subject. Just sad that we're still not helping each other the way we could. Yeah. There was a lot of hurt. There's been a lot of hurt. Glenn's the only sexual partner I've ever had, and a lot of hurt has occurred in that relationship. So a lot of hurt. Let's see. Joy. Yeah, a lot of joy. First of all, talking about this today with you, a lot of joy, but also a lot of joy for the next season of our life, because we really are on a mission to be more adventuresome in life in general. And we are really addressing things that have kept us from that. We're really addressing pain points in our life and making big changes. So I'm excited, a lot of joy for the adventure that lies ahead for us.
I love that. Thank you. For me, anger. I think I feel anger with myself. That I didn't do more of this kind of work earlier on in our marriage. That the fear weighed me down so deeply, and I didn't get curious about Because, man, we missed out on some like really great years that we could have had pre-kids that I feel really angry about. I feel shame. I'll process my current shame, and that is just shame in my body. You know, I've had 4 kids, and there's a lot of shame that I experience still in sex with Wes. As safe as he makes me feel, I still feel that. Guilt. I feel guilt. I'm going to try to make it as current as possible because Wes and I still are growing in this area. I feel guilt for whenever he does approach me with something now, or I don't converse with him about sex as much as I should or could, because he's like, if I put a podcast mic in front of you talk about it, but you have a hard time talking with me about it. And so I still fall into that category, and I have guilt about that. I feel fear. I do feel fear that I'm going to get an email from someone with harsh judgment, even judgment whenever I share things that I've tried or am trying, because I've received a lot of emails of judgment. And so, yeah, lots of fear there. Lonely. I will say loneliness because Wes is also my only sexual partner. And so I think there is loneliness in that of like, it's up to me to make sure this is really good for him. And that was actually like a really big eye opener for me of like, whoa, I'm his only one. So I got to do this thing well for him. And there's joy in that. And there's also loneliness in that. I can't like tag somebody else in, you know, like I'm tired, your turn. And then hurt. I feel hurt over, the messages that I received that definitely weighed me down and held me back early in our marriage when I was in those like really, where I just felt good in my body, you know, I feel hurt about that. And I'm missing one, sad. I feel sad. Something is missing. I feel sad probably about the things that he is still wanting to try that I am still needing to process things through, because that's something that's missing. Like I feel sad of my full confidence there, that I'm still growing in that area. So I'm missing the confidence that I haven't gained yet. That I know is coming, but I haven't gotten there fully yet. So I long for that. And my joy is, I'll say joy in the level of safety that I have with Wes, because he does deserve a medal for being married to me, because he creates so much safety for me. So I can show up for him really vulnerably. I can try new things with him and connect in a really deep level because of that. So, that's my joy.
Amazing.
Yeah. And thank you all for listening.
Yes.
I did have a thought in what you were sharing initially for men that are listening. And that is, if you are approaching your partner and there are things that you're wanting to try. We had a guy actually email this question recently. They're wanting to try things and their wife is resistant. I encourage you, one, to dig into yourself and really find out, are you a safe space for her? How can you create more safety for her? And then 2, get curious from a place of curiosity. There are times where asking those questions can come across as judgmental of like, why won't you do this? What's happening with you? Even you can change your tone there versus like, whenever you want to talk about this, like, I'm just curious. I'm curious what is happening for you? What is holding you back? Would you want to talk with someone about this? And just approaching her with gentleness and understanding, especially depending on what season of life her body is in. If she has just had a baby, if she is pregnant, like any of those seasons are so tender for women. And I'm so glad that we had Sam Jolman on our podcast recently, where he talked about messages that men received. And so if you haven't listened to that episode, men and women both, you should both be listening to both of these episodes, because that's partnership. That's knowing, ooh, what's happening for your man. Oh, what's happening for your woman, and really digging in there.
So good.
Because we both received messages. And so thank you so much for listening to this. I encourage you to share this with your girlfriend that you want to share more ideas with. My favorite, I shouldn't say my favorite girlfriend. I have so many good ones, but one of my favorite girlfriends, my very best friend, she gives me all kinds of good ideas. Wes is yeah, you go hang out with her anytime you want to, because we talk about sex all the time.
That's wonderful.
So yes, girls, you want your husbands to encourage you to have girls' nights? Start talking about sex with them and share this with that girl. And if you have not left us a 5-star review, please do so. It helps us spread this word. And we are doing a giveaway. Send a screenshot of your review and you can be entered to draw our mug, a magnet, one of our items that we have. Thank you for being here. And we do all of this because
you need this.
You deserve this.
Let's do this.
Let's do this.